Thanks so much for allowing me to be here today and talk about corporate social responsibility at Dell. It's an area I have a lot of passion about. I practiced law for 25 years, and I really managed to become pretty adept at making money change hands based on contract clauses. And I know that sounds inspirational to most people in the room, but when I switched careers 7 years ago to run corporate social responsibility for Dell, I got to do things like work with companies that are turning mushrooms into packaging. It's a little bit more fun every single day. So I love what I get to do, and I'm excited to share how we made this real at Dell and why we do it as well. So with that, I'm going to launch right in. So let's start with the why we do it. So here's why. Let's talk about global population trends. I want to talk about global resource trends, our customers, and our employees. I know that seems like an odd bucket, an odd collection, but you'll see how it all comes together in a minute. So we're going to start with global population trends. And I know some people have seen this, but if you haven't, it's an interesting point of data. Today, there are a little over 7 billion people in the world. By 2050, we're going to have about 9.5 billion people. In the interim, by 2030, we're going to add about 3 billion new people to the middle class. Most of those people will be coming from Asia, primarily China, some from India. All of them are going to want all of the things that the rest of the middle class in the world has today. They're going to want more gadgets, more appliances, more cars, more clothes, and it's going to cost more energy and more resources, right? And let me give you a little quick example, just a window of what's happening today. In 2009, China passed the United States as the largest market for automobiles. That year, their number of annual sales went up to 10 million. By 2015, it went up to 21 million, more than doubled. Compare that to the United States, that took it 20 years to go from 5 million to 20 million. So just think about, from 5 million to 10 million. So think about that in terms of what that requires in terms of natural resources. So let's take that data on population growth and let's layer it against the data that's really talking about our business model of prevalence today, which is consumption. Think about all our businesses, right? We grow our businesses by selling more products or services. That's been the plan for a long time and has been highly successful for a long time. So if you're looking at 2.5 billion more people and 3 billion people more in the middle class, it sounds great, right? Problem is we don't have enough resources to meet that demand. To put this in perspective, if everyone in the world consumed at the same rate as just the United States consumed, it would take 5 Earths to meet that demand. The World Resources Institute predicts that if we use the same consumption model that we have today, by 2050, we will use 3 times as many resources as we are using in 2000. There just isn't that much to go around. So what does that mean? It means companies can do a number of things. They can decide to ignore this. That seems like sort of a short-term strategic plan. Not great. They can make incremental changes, and I think a lot of companies are doing that today, where you're doing things like using more renewable energy, so reducing the number of resources that you consume. Or you can embrace this, which means making both incremental changes, but also significantly changing your business models. And I love to use Airbnb as the example here, because if you think about them, they sell more hotel nights annually than the Hilton hotels, and they did that without building one brick-and-mortar structure, without taking any new resources. So it really turned the whole business model on its head of the hotel industry. That's the kind of change that it's going to require, and all of our businesses are going to have to start thinking about that. At Dell, we're one of the companies that has started to embrace the circular economy. So the circular economy, here we go, is moving from a take, make, waste, which has been the traditional method that we use for manufacturing today and selling our products, to starting to think about how do we both design our products for recyclability, but also design them so that the materials are an asset, so that we can continue to use the materials that are in a product again and again. So this is a pretty significant change, and given the resource constraints and given the increased consumption that's going to come with the increased population growth, companies that get ahead of this curve are going to win. So now let's talk a little bit about customers. At Dell, and this is Dell-specific data on the 70%, we know our customers care about corporate responsibility, and we know that because they ask it to us in about 70% of our requests for proposals. They ask us all the time, what are we doing for our environment and what are we doing for people on the planet? So we know that. We also know that they are starting to put it in RFPs as a weighted evaluation criteria, which is a new trend. We had one recent RFP where 50% of the weight of the valuation was what we're doing in CSR. Now, that's still on the exception end of what we're seeing, but we are seeing an increase of it being a weighted criteria. We also know that consumers care. A recent study that looked at the 9 largest global markets, and these numbers, by the way, I find a little stunning. 9 largest global markets showed that 9 out of 10 consumers think a company has a responsibility to do more than make a profit. They think we have a responsibility to behave ethically and to do something for social and environmental responsibility. We also know that 81% of consumers consider social responsibility when they're making a purchase decision. We also know that 61% of consumers would just forego owning a product in order to save environmental resources. They would actually be fine just sharing a product. So think Zipcar, which actually started here in Boston. Now let me use a little example that also highlights this here. How many people in the room own a home power drill? Right? So the average lifetime use of a home power drill is 20 minutes. There's an example screaming for a new business model. And consumers, I think, are a little ahead of us in this area, and they're already thinking about that. Now let's talk for a minute about employees. Employees care about this as well. 45% of employees would take a 15% pay cut to work for a company that they felt had a positive social and environmental impact. 65% of employees would leave a company that they thought had a negative social or environmental impact. And the number 3 reason, that's good, number 3. The number 3 reason employees go to a company, right behind what the product is and the culture of the company, the next reason is, what are the social causes that that company supports? So if you look at all of this data, and I know I just threw out a lot of statistics, but if we look at this combined, what it tells us is that CSR is not a nice to have anymore. It's a business imperative. And particularly given the growth of consumption and the growth of the population coming up, it's something we can't ignore any longer. And if you want to retain and hire the best and the brightest employees, you're going to have to do something here. And most companies, by the way, certainly all of the Fortune 500 are doing things in this area. So now you know why we do it. Let's talk a little bit now, like the practical side. How do you actually get this done? So for Dell, we started on a journey to put together a long-term strategic inspirational plan that would have hopefully 3 outcomes. We wanted to drive innovation in the company. We wanted to create collaboration both in our industry and also with our customers and other industries to reach our goals, but as well as to help them reach their goals in the CSR arena. And we also wanted to be engaged in our community, where we can use our technology and our people and our dollars really to do the most good for people on the planet. So in 2013, we launched what we call our 2020 Legacy of Good. This is 22 goals that set forth what we're going to do for our community, our people, and the planet. The overarching goal is what we call a net positive goal, and that is that by 2020, the good that comes from our technology will be 10 times what it takes to create and use it. Net positive is kind of a trend now. So some companies are starting to go this way, and it's all about, you can't any longer just say we want to do less harm, because less harm is harm, right? By definition. You have to start saying, what can you do with your technology to advance human progress that is greater than the footprint that you cause? That's what this is about. And I'm going to give you a recent example. We are the technology partner for Arizona State University for their online teaching. ASU has the largest online program of any state-run university. They have over 30,000 students engaged. Actually, it's greater than that. Back when we started, over 40,000 students engaged in online learning today. And so they came and they talked to us and they said, you know what, we want to know what, if any, difference this makes or impact it has in terms of social and environmental good. what happens here, and if you know anything about ASU, they have a big school of sustainability. They're very interested in this topic. So together we conducted a study to see, so what does online learning do? Does it help at all in any way? And what we found, the not too surprising thing is, yes, you have significant carbon offset. And the reason is you have all these students that are no longer driving into the school. We're not building as many buildings. We're not heating and air conditioning them. We're not putting in parking lots. So that part, I think, is kind of obvious, right? It's going to be less. We had to build a bigger data center, so there was a larger footprint with the data center. But it was significantly offset by the savings. But to me, the real aha moment here was something that's really hard to measure, which is how do you measure good? And we talked to a lot of people about this. It's hard to measure good. But what we found out is that the average student in the ASU online learning program is a 34-year-old single mom who couldn't go to school without this ability. And this ability increases her lifetime earnings by $545,000. That was a really interesting moment for me personally, just because we haven't been able to measure that. And so we're really excited by this. So here are our 22 goals. I know you're looking forward to me going through each one. I'm going to read them, and then I'm going to talk about how we measure each one. That would be a really long night. So what I'm going to do instead is pull out a couple of the goals and use them to highlight how did we make this real, both internally for our employees to kind of connect to their hearts and minds, how did we drive it into the business, and how did we use it externally also for amplification. And we really do this in 3 ways. We do this through circular design and practice. We do it through collaboration, and we do it through community engagement. So let's start with the circular design. And I know we just talked about, remember, that's the circular economy is all about how you consider your materials an asset. So let me tell you 2 of our goals. One of our goals is to collect 2 billion pounds of e-waste by 2020. Dell is the largest collector of e-waste recycler in the planet, and we have operations in over 83 countries. So we want to get 2 billion pounds of e-waste. We have another goal to use 50 million pounds of recycled plastic in our product. So how do these 2 goals come together? Well, it was really interesting. We have a take-back team that does our recycling and collects it, in the 83 countries. And we have another team that's product regulatory and compliance. I'm sure a lot of you in the room have product regulatory and compliance teams. Well, they got together and they started saying, we're collecting 2 billion pounds of e-waste, and it's got all this plastic in it. Why aren't we using that plastic in our systems? Why aren't we putting it back into new systems? So thus was born the first UL-certified closed-loop cycle. We worked with a supplier to learn how to take the plastic out of the e-waste, recycle it, and put it back into new systems. Today we're using it in our displays, in our desktops, and in our all-in-ones. We've used 12 million pounds of plastic coming out of the e-waste, and we're putting it back into our systems. Now, this obviously gets our employees super excited. And it was really exciting because we were honored in January of 2016 with the World Economic Forum's first Circular Award for this closed-loop supply chain. And that really obviously gets the employees excited as well. And here's the other thing, and this is the one Michael Dell always loves. It has a lower carbon footprint, and it costs less. So you can imagine how excited employees are when they get this opportunity to do something that's really good for the world. They get recognized for it, and it makes a difference. So it's really exciting. Okay, so I know this is kind of a different one, right? We have a goal. This is how you combine a goal and a movie star. So we have a goal to have zero waste packaging by 2020. We also have a partnership with Adrian Grenier. He's both an environmentalist and an actor. You might recognize him as Vinny, if you're thinking Entourage. We connected with Adrian a number of years ago, and he became our social good advocate. And we really wanted to work with him because he's a serious environmentalist. He is incredibly creative, and we wanted to use our technology, his creativity, and our combined passion to change the world to really do something interesting. So our employees got together with Adrian, and they said, how do we help him? By the way, his big cause is the ocean. He started something called the Lonely Whale Foundation to really save the oceans. So our employees got together and said, how do we help you, Adrian, do something good for the oceans, and how do we meet one of our goals? And we picked the plastics goal, the zero waste packaging goal. And so what they did is launched a feasibility study 18 months ago to see, could we take plastics out of the estuaries and off the beaches and use them in our packaging? Would that be feasible? And we worked with academia as well on this, and we also worked with the Lonely Whale Foundation, his foundation, on this. We actually sent teams down to Haiti. I mean, this is like real time happening. And we sent them down to Haiti. If you haven't seen pictures, there are places of water in Haiti that look like they're just land because there's so much plastic you can't see the water anymore. And there are people there that are starting to collect those plastics and build businesses on recycling that plastic. So we sent our systems engineers down there. We sent supply chain experts down there. Our packaging engineers went down there. Adrian went down there. Someone from my team even went down there because he happened to be French, and we wanted to make sure that we understood what people were saying, the employees in the supply chain, so we knew it was an ethical practice that we were getting involved with. And what happened from all of this, I'm pleased to announce, is that just this month, we launched our first ocean plastic packaging. You can see that with the little lonely whale inside there for our XPS 13 2-in-1. So it just launched just this month. So we're really excited about that. We will be using, this year, 8 tons of plastic. But I want to put that in perspective for everybody, because 8 tons of plastic sounds like a lot. The oceans today have 85 million tons of plastic in them. We're adding an additional 8 million tons every single year of plastic to the ocean. If you are over the age of 6, with a few exceptions, pretty much everyone in here looks like they're over the age of 6, you have a significant chance of already having plastic in your system. 93% of you or us do, because it's getting in the food, right? A recent study I just read came out this week, actually, looking at sea salt. All the sea salt that they studied all has ocean plastics, oddly enough, except for French. Note to file, if you're a chef, get the French stuff. But I mean, so it's a real problem, and while we're doing 8 million pounds and we plan to go 10x that, it's obviously still a significant problem that we have to think about. So those are 2 examples of how we looked at the circular economy. Now I want to talk a little bit about collaboration, because this is another really important thing, and that's why I love a room of industry people, because I think as industries, we're going to do more to change the world, certainly than you would imagine if you're trying to do it by yourself, right? So we talked a little bit about our net positive goal, which is the 10 by 20, which is, we hope that the good that comes from our technology is 20 times greater. I mean, by 2020, it'll be 10 times greater than the harm it caused, right? That's really hard to measure. But there's other companies that are starting to look at this as well. So working with Forum for the Future and BSR, we pulled in like-minded companies together to start to figure out how we go measure this. Now, it's really interesting because a lot of these companies, you can see all the logos up there, are also, some are competitors, but a lot of them are also our customers. So it's a great opportunity to work with your customers to really make a lasting impact. So I want to use one other collaboration example, and we're going to go back to ocean plastics here. So I mentioned that, right, we're using 8 million pounds every year, but there's 8 million tons going into the ocean every year. So one of the things we decided to do, and we've just embarked on this project, and anyone who's interested, by the way, come speak with me afterwards, but what we're doing now is pulling together other companies that use plastics in their products, and it's very few that don't, right? And that are interested in this ocean plastic process, and we're working to create the world's first, largest, sustainable, scalable ocean plastic supply chain. So that's how I feel like the power of industry and collaboration, we can do so much more together than we're able to do on our own. And we can really make lasting, sustainable impact on the environment when we work together. All right, so we talked about collaboration, and now we're going to, and with circular design. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about what we do in our communities. So we make things really come to life in our communities through education, engagement, and amplification. Let me talk a little bit about education first. We have a goal that by 2020, we will help educate and provide technology access to both to 4 million underprivileged children around the world. We also have internal goals to help people in the supply chain, and a lot of our supply chain is in China. In China, there are significant reliance in the manufacturing process on migrant workers. So migrant workers, one of the things they need to do, in fact, there's 277 million migrant workers in China to support all the manufacturing in the country. And to put that in perspective, if migrant workers, laborers, were a country, they would be the 4th largest country out of China, right behind, sandwiched in between the United States and Indonesia. So they have a choice if they have children. When they go to work in the factories and in the cities, they can either leave their children back behind in the rural area with family and friends, or they can bring their children with them, and they have to go to what are basically migrant schools because there's no room in the public schools. They can't go into the regular city public schools. So the education gap between the rural and the migrant schools is significant. In China, one of the requirements to graduate from high school is that you be able to pass an English proficiency test. And in the rural and the migrant schools, the kids weren't passing the test. So our employees said, hey, where can we help here? How do we help the migrant workers, and what can we do? Because it also ties in maybe with our education goal. And so what we started doing is working with Stanford University, and they have what they call the Rural Education Action Program, or REAP. And together, we started going into the rural schools first to use our technology and their software to really help children learn. They have great software that involves gamification. And then we moved into some of the migrant schools, and what we found is that the students who are engaged in the REAP program learn twice as much English as the students who weren't. So we're having great success working with Stanford University on this program, and what we're going to do next is take this more online. So when we started the program, the rural areas only had 2% access to the internet. Now it's up to 20%. So far, we've only been able to impact around slightly less than 20,000 students. Our goal by 2020, working with Stanford, is to reach 1 million students. So the technology is really going to allow scale in a way that we couldn't get before, and we're really excited by that. So let me look at one other example. And this really goes to engagement that I talked about. And we have a goal where we want to have 5 million hours of community service by 2020 from our employees, and we would like to have 75% of our employees engage in volunteer activity. So they're big numbers. How do we get there? So when we launched this, we said we got to create a culture of volunteerism within the company in order to do this. So the natural thing for us to do was create a little competition, and we did it in the most natural way you can. We sent a list at the end of the year to all of Michael Dell's direct reports, and we made sure they all saw each other's number. And you know what it's like when you go to the top. If your number's smaller than the next guy's number, you're going to go compete to get a bigger number. We didn't have to say, hey, compete, because they just do. So it really actually did start a competition among the leadership to get the most volunteer hours. Great. So we really started getting good volunteer hours. Okay, the side effect. People started feeling a little bit voluntold, a little bit less volunteered. So we had to start working to change that culture a little bit, to get away from the voluntold to the volunteered. But it has been so successful. Managers at all levels have realized that using volunteering in your community for team building is so much better than other methods. And I can tell you it's so successful that in years I have not had to, blessedly, do one of those, okay, there's an imaginary river, and then there's some imaginary rocks, and we're going to cross it because they're imaginary crocodiles in there, and we have to make sure the whole team gets across. You've all been there, right? We've all done that exercise somewhere along the line. Instead, I've had the opportunity to beautify and clean up parks with teams at Dell, to provide food to people that don't have it, and to put together holiday bags for children that wouldn't get them otherwise. It's a much better team-building activity. And I will say today we are at 67% employee volunteerism across the company, and that's about 100,000 employees. Well, that was pre-merger. We have to do the new numbers now that we've merged with EMC. And over the last 2 years, we've had over 800,000 hours of community service from our employees. It really has created a culture of volunteerism. And I have to admit that it also helped that we provided a little incentive. So the little incentive we provided was, for every 10 hours you volunteer in a quarter, we're going to give you a $150 cause card, which means that you get $150 to give to the charity of your choice globally. So this was actually a great incentive because it had two outcomes. One, people were really motivated to get involved with their 10 hours. And two, it drove them to our website, where we have sort of our internal social media website where they would record their hours. So it really was a great outcome for us when we did that. So that's been super successful. Now I'm going to talk real quickly about amplification. And this is, how do you get your employees to learn about and really get their heart and soul involved with the things, the goals that you're working on. And again, I'm going to go to ocean plastics. And the reason I am is because this was the first campaign that we launched that was really end-to-end. Not only was it driving a significant business initiative and was driven by the business, it also involved our customers outside in collaboration, and we really also involved our employee base. So it was really kind of the first time we had this holistic approach to one of our campaigns. So what we did was we launched in April. Everyone know April 22nd is Earth Day, probably not, but April 22nd is Earth Day. And we used that as a catalyst to do a global campaign for our employees to volunteer working to clean up beaches and waterways from plastics and trash. So we had great results, but it also, you can see the pictures of people around the world, but the other great result was it really educated our employees and got them excited about what the company's doing in this area. In fact, I get emails every single day from employees around the world saying, what else can we do? So we know that that's working, and we're really excited by that. So I want to share one other example that I just touched me personally, and it was recently. Every February, we get all of our global sales team members in Las Vegas, and we do our annual kind of training, alignment sessions. It's a little bit of a pep rally, and we always try to incorporate a little bit of our giving into that. And so this year, we asked them to bring hats for children with pediatric cancer. We happen to partner with an organization called TGen that is doing cutting-edge research in pediatric cancer and genomics. They're using our technology to do the genomic testing, and they're the only company out there doing FDA-approved trials right now, clinical trials with children with pediatric cancer. It's really hard to get approved to do trials on children. And they're having some really interesting and good success. So we wanted to help them out, and we had all these employees coming in. So we said, hey, let's bring hats, and then we'll pass them out to the partner hospitals that are working on the project, because they're all over the United States and some globally, to all the children involved in the program. One employee happened to be the sales rep for the Chicago Cubs. I don't know if there are any Chicago Cubs fans in here, but you might know that they had this amazing win of the World Series. So he, on his own account, he went to the Chicago Cubs and said, you know how meaningful it would be if you could give us some hats, some ball caps for kids with cancer? And they stepped up big time. They sent us over 1,000 ball caps for children. And to me, that really is a demonstration where, no one asked anyone to do anything, but where people and power and passion and purpose came together to make a meaningful change in some children's lives. And that's what it is to really make it real every day. And I know that people in this room and all of us do it, and we can do more together. So with that, I thank you very much.